Hello, everybody, and welcome to Narrative. Over the last 48 hours, America has been introduced into the reality of Elon Musk and Donald Trump. As we've been warning you for months, this will be an arrangement like no other, where a naturalized citizen has become America's de facto king, something we haven't seen since George III. The irony shouldn't be lost on anybody. America was founded specifically to prevent such despotic leaders from ever taking office. Yet here we are in 2024, watching one man gain effective control over the executive agenda, significant influence over the House proceedings, and as we've documented before, sway over the Supreme Court. Musk promotes narratives about birth rate crises and civilization's collapse, requiring urgent colonization of Mars. But let's be clear, neither crisis is imminent. Yes, climate change looms, but are we facing immediate societal collapse? There's no evidence to suggest that. Birth rates? Sure, they're a concern, but not one that requires an absolute quick fix today. These dystopian predictions are classic snake oil salesmanship. America remains the world's most powerful nation, with an unmatched economy and military. There's no rational basis for dismantling our systems over one man's projected fears. Now that man has an undefined role in our government. He wields unprecedented power over budgets and policy, not to mention maintaining control over SpaceX and what he calls the world's most powerful news platform, X. Tonight on the show, we'll be reminding you exactly of what Elon Musk is doing for Vladimir Putin and explain the signs of Russian interference in our election and in the incoming government. Before we begin tonight, we have an important message. For 8 years, we've been at the forefront of investigating Russia's influence operations and the threats to American democracy. Our work has consistently broken new ground, from the original Russia House investigation in 2016 to our recent revelations about Elon Musk's role in Russia's information warfare campaign. The threats that we investigate are becoming more sophisticated and powerful. They're requiring more resources and, frankly, protection. At the same time, the platforms we rely on are increasingly hostile to independent journalists. That's why, starting immediately, we're moving to what we're calling a freemium model. And here's what that means. Key segments from each show will remain free and accessible to all. Full episodes and in-depth investigations will be available to subscribers only. And to subscribe, you'll need to go to narrative.org, our main website, and sign up. This also holds for podcasts. Full podcasts will no longer be available for free. You'll need to subscribe in order to watch or listen to our podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. Breaking news and urgent updates on social media will remain free, and premium subscribers will get access to even more content, including exclusive briefings and analysis. This isn't just about sustainability, it's also about security. To continue our investigative work in an increasingly hostile environment, we need to build a more resilient, independent platform. For our loyal viewers who've been with us from the start, your support has made our investigations possible. The war on democracy we're documenting isn't just about election interference, it's about the future of America and American life. Thank you for being a part of our mission. One of our favorite people, Olga Lautman from the Center for European Policy Analysis, is here. She's a senior fellow there. You also know her from the Kremlin files. She's one of the key people who over the years has been exposing Donald Trump and his ties to Russia, and now also Elon Musk's ties to Russia. Here we are again. Olga, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
The reality of what happened in November is beginning to sink in, and it's partially because of this Musk decreeing that there shall be no new budget implemented until Donald Trump is in office. That is probably the first real sign of what it looks like to have an authoritarian government in the United States. Someone who's not elected, someone who's never been elected. Someone questioned whether he's even would qualify to be the president of the United States, but he's acting like the king. And here we are. This is the first sign of what it looks like when you don't have a democracy that's functioning. Tell us a little bit more about your reaction to today's events and yesterday's events and what it really means in the long term.
I mean, at this point, and actually over the past few weeks, with the thing that Elon has been doing between meeting with world leaders, going to France for the Notre Dame, making cabinet big decisions. Who is our president? Because Trump he occasionally out messages on social media, but it seems that Musk is the one driving the car. And I think it's incredible because this takes us in a very strange territory of chaos and instability where you have the richest man in the world who cannot be president in this country, who is in fact president-elect of this country and bought himself the presidency by investing, $250, $300 million for the White House seat. So,
at a steal.
That's not right. Really, for him, it's like a bottle of water to buy the most powerful position in the world. And then we see the effects of it. We already see what Republican governing is. We got a good taste of it. First time in 150 years, they didn't have a Speaker of the House on speak. And then he got fired from his position. So we already saw a chaotic Congress under GOP. Now they're all in line with Trump. We are days before Christmas and New Year's, and they're threatening to shut down the government.
And they want to get rid of the debt ceiling, which is quite something, and possibly default on the debt. This is all creating chaos. Now, you might believe that there is an urgent need for $2 trillion to be cut out of the budget. Many people think that there's way too much spending, lots of corruption, unnecessary spending by the government. Of course there is. But is it a serious enough of a crisis right now to be defaulting on the debt or getting rid of the debt ceiling or not passing a budget? Of course it isn't, except in the mind of Elon Musk and by extension, Vladimir Putin. The people who this crisis, which will be manufactured, will be serving the most is Elon Musk, his billionaire friends, and Vladimir Putin at the end of the day, who needs a solution to Ukraine quite quickly, and he is needing some chaos in the United States to do it. They intend to be urgently acting in the interests of Russia the minute Donald Trump is inaugurated.
Yeah, and then those, what are their plans? To go after the FBI, to go after the Department of Justice, to go after all the critical agencies, national security, that keep America safe at home and abroad.
Yeah.
Who else had the same interest other than Russia to see our agencies be cut and thrown in complete chaos?
Let's not forget that the nominees for some of these positions, like the Department of National Intelligence, one of them is Tulsi Gabbard, who, I exposed as being a complete Russian asset. That was enough to get her out of the running for the presidency back then. But here she is now back as potentially the head of the Department of National Intelligence, which is unbelievable because she will report everything directly to Vladimir Putin.
Not only was she an asset for Russia, she whitewashed a war criminal Assad on behalf of Russia, because this is at the time Russia was running operations to deflect blame elsewhere on chemical weapons being used, that it was Syrian opposition forces and the U.S. and everybody except Assad who used it. And here she was absolutely parroting the same exact thing. What about Peter Hegseth? This is supposed to lead our Pentagon, someone who could be compromised, will be drunk and end up raping people, and foreign intelligence services will assist him in compromising him.
That's a really good point you're making about the compromising. And then Kash Patel, who is potentially the head of the FBI, he should be investigated by the FBI. He should be behind bars because of the FBI, because of his involvement in January the 6th. And here he is running the department. This isn't really getting ludicrous, but here we are.
And when Patel won during the 2020 election, he was part of the Russian conspiracy to attack the election in disseminating fake information on Joe Biden, on his son Hunter.
Right.
He was the one, he officially had, I believe, for the National Security Council, a counterterrorism position. Unofficially, he was delivering Russian bullshit from Russian intelligence agencies directly to Trump, to the point that Trump even at the time said that he is one of his Ukraine policy people. This is bullshit that Giuliani and others were working with Russian agents. Derkach, who was the main one providing this fabricated lies, Derkach is a GRU agent.
Yeah.
Who now is in Russia and has a political position. So this is who Patel was. And then you have January 6th. And then you have the fact that he's putting together a retribution list and that he plans to use the FBI to go after opposition, to go after media, and to go after the political parties. If you wanted to make a direct comparison of what Russia's FSB is to, this is what our FBI will be.
Because what we're talking about is people being pursued under false pretenses. They'll be compromised into positions or whatever that make them look like criminals, even though they're not. That's what the FSB works like. And that's exactly what Kash Patel will do in the retribution department of the FBI if he's appointed.
He himself said that he will go after members of the media, that he will go after the political party, the Democratic Party, and then obviously NGOs and everyone associated with democracy issues, anti-corruption issues, and trying to expose the corruption that is going to take by Trump. He himself said this, that he has a retribution list ready to go.
And let's be clear about why they're doing this right now. And we'll present a lot of this evidence coming up the next 45 minutes here. There is a lot to be said about how Russia interfered in the 2024 elections. We've still not had a definitive report about how and to what extent they interfered in the elections. We're expecting that report from the intelligence community next week. But we can anticipate some of what is going to be said in that report, as we did last time you were on the show, where we were able to detail how the operation to elect Donald Trump was centered around Elon Musk. But it involved various connections to Russian officials. There was direct communication, of course, between Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin. That's well documented now. It started in 2021, but in 2022, around the time he was buying Twitter, that's when that communication picked up. And then the man to the left there is Sergei Karyenko. He's a first deputy chief of staff in Putin's office, but he's also the man who's been the architect of all these disinformation and propaganda campaigns that have been targeted at various parts of the world, but particularly at the United States. And then, of course, we also know that some of the funding to buy Twitter was through an venture firm, which was employing, or still is employing, two children of well-known oligarchs. And so you have these three very clear lines of connection to the Kremlin, which helped Elon Musk buy Twitter and turn it into X, which has become quite a powerhouse in the world. It was already before, but he certainly has turned it into even more of a powerhouse. Some would say, he would say, it's the number one news entity in the world. And you've also got the fact that he spent 140 million, maybe as much as 250 million, depending on who you listen to fund the Trump campaign. Plus, he was the person who single-handedly picked out J.D. Vance as the vice presidential nominee. He's in the middle of so much corruption and foreign interference. You can't really look at the election of 2024 and at Donald Trump's election as anything other than the result of this broad-based Kremlin operation.
Russia has all their intelligence services that are dedicated to 24/7 sending out disinformation, putting out propaganda. While we're sleeping, they're typing away. They are disseminating information, creating fake outlets. And it unfortunately has gotten to the point so widespread that even normal intelligent people who are savvy with news fall victim to Russian disinformation and will occasionally say something and it's, no, this is not true. This is coming out of Russia. Europe had started taking measures against him the other day. The EU announced sanctions against Russia, including Kirienko, for disinformation operations targeting. No. Russia's carrying this out everywhere from Serbia to Moldova to Romania to United States to Africa to Middle East. Disinformation comes from Russia. It's disinformatia, which was an old KGB tactic and one of the most powerful ones. The main objective of Russia, and this is going back to the Soviet days, this goes even back to the Tsars, is control of the information space. Because once you have control of the information space, then you can not only put out your propaganda in order to keep people in line, but you can also use that for disinformation and whatnot. Unfortunately, with the advances in technology, what the KGB did with their disinformation operations in America during the Cold War, if they were to place an ad and 100 people read it, they saw it was a success. Now, with the internet, they could put out disinformation within minutes, billions of people will see it. And then, of course, through the bots and trolls, it gets amplified. And then you have Elon Musk himself, who has been amplifying Russian disinformation, including American influencers paid by Russia to disseminate their disinformation and their propaganda.
What's interesting is all the additional disinformation that was pushed out by Elon Musk and Twitter during the election period is actually very important to look at from a illegal perspective. We've never had financial investment in any campaign as big as this. You're talking about millions and millions of dollars of free support for the Donald Trump campaign that was not reported to the Federal Election Committee, that was not transparent in terms of its spend, nor was it accounted for. And yet we know that Elon Musk bought Twitter during consultation with Vladimir Putin. We know he did it with the help of oligarch children who helped fund the purchase of Twitter. And we know that soon after his purchase of Twitter and turning it into X, he was in touch with Kiriyenko. And there's an actual meme that we were able to prove that Elon Musk sent out that was created by the Social Design Agency, which is an intelligence front in Russia, which was 24/7, as you say, producing propaganda and disinformation for the American market. And Elon Musk retweeted that meme, you see there, of Vladimir Zelensky to his millions of followers. We can see the makeup of an influence operation and where Elon Musk fits into that and where Twitter or X fits into that and how that constitutes an act of illegal interference in the election campaign. Why don't you think there's been a bigger noise about all of this, about why Elon Musk and company could invest so much into Donald Trump's campaign and not be accused of foreign meddling?
Yeah, and it would be very interesting to know. I still have questions about the 2016 election of why things weren't resolved or discussed or exposed. And then we saw the 2020 election and why Giuliani walking around free. And why did it take two poll workers to take Giuliani down and make him broke for his attacks on them during the 2020 election and accusing them and turning a whole hate mob against them all for doing their job and volunteering to be poll workers? He, during that time, was running around with Russian agents. Feared that. He was with Dirkach. He was running around and he sought the Russians out to help him on behalf of Trump to fabricate evidence on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, and then fed this to the Department of Justice, to Trump, and no one still have done anything about it. Literally, all the presentation that Comer and Jim Jordan presented came from Russian intelligence.
No, relevant to the 24 election too, because Biden was running in that election. And there was a lot of disinformation about him, a lot of information that took him down at the end. Whether his old age was as big a factor as it landed up being, we're not quite sure, but it was certainly amplified as a key issue around Joe Biden by Russian intelligence services and by Russian disinformation. And it's interesting, just in recent days, Elon Musk, in response to this tweet by one of his sycophants here, says Elon's purchase of Twitter was the single most consequential act of the last decade. It restored free speech, broke the overtone window, and enabled the Second American Revolution. That's all nonsense, of course, but here's what he says in response. History will be the judge, but probably within the top 5. And then he says, buying Twitter caused me mega pain, but it had to be done to ensure humanity took the good fork in the road. What is he talking about, the good fork in the road?
Russia over the rest of the world. And we were putting out information on what was happening, Russia's war crimes, evidence of genocide, Mariupol and whatnot. And as soon as Elon bought Twitter, our engagement got cut by 3/4. It was like, hello, are we even alive on this platform? Does anyone hear us? The first mission for Twitter after he purchased it was to silence Ukrainians. And Twitter is one of the most powerful platforms. And over the past year and a half, it has been like Telegram. Russia had its Telegram to disseminate its propaganda for their domestic audience. controlled by the state. And here you have Twitter that is disseminating the information that Trump and Elon want you to know. And at this point now it's going to be controlled by the state. Because with Elon, he might as well sit in the Oval Office, and maybe he will.
It's really interesting you say that. Back in 2023, this is something that has not been received a lot of attention. But there's this article from 2023 headlined, Medvedev, the Russian prime minister, I guess then, suggests that Elon Musk launched campaign to amend the U.S. Constitution. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution stipulates that no person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. Of course, Elon Musk can't be the president of the United States, but there's Medvedev in 23, before we saw Elon Musk support Donald Trump publicly, already advocating for Elon Musk to be the president of the United States. So if you think that the framework that we're putting Elon Musk in, which is in the Kremlin framework, is somehow overstated, just look at this information here, because here is Medvedev himself advocating for Elon Musk well before any of us were really sure of Elon Musk's connections to the Kremlin, which we now can quite clearly prove.
Slight correction, Medvedev at the time was a deputy of the National Security Council.
Thank you.
Former president, former prime minister, but he is arguably, say, the third most powerful person in Russia. Putin, Patrushev, Medvedev, they're the ones. Somewhere along the lines, Russia must have approached Elon, because I think there's a way longer history going back a few decades between Elon and Russia. But later on, he became extremely effective for Ukrainians when he allowed the Starlink to be used in order for Ukrainians after Russia launched the full-scale invasion. That pissed off Russia a lot. And by November of 20, he starts tampering with the Starlink. And there were a few key operations that Ukrainians were carrying out where the Starlink failed.
This evolution of not only Elon Musk's connection to Vladimir Putin, which is the bottom line, this red line at the bottom, but above that, you also see his evolution as a political animal, how he turned basically from a Democrat to a Republican after his conversations with Putin, certainly within the year. And you can see that the first contact with Putin was April 2021. He switches parties in May 2022. And by October 22, he's buying Twitter, but he does that only with consultations with Vladimir Putin before, during, and after the purchase of Twitter. So we know that all of that at least appears to be part of this massive operation to disrupt American politics and elect Donald Trump. And then you've got the Kirienko contacts beginning in November 22, and then he goes to endorse Trump. But during that time, Putin is asking a lot of Elon Musk about Starlink. Firstly, Starlink is helpful to Putin in the execution of the attack on Ukraine. And then later on, he also asks a favor for Xi Jinping regarding Starlink. So talk about Starlink and what that means to the war in Ukraine, but also to this very strong relationship now between Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin, where they're doing favors for each other, costing lives.
Yeah, and this is what happened in Ukraine, because it was around the fall, I believe November 22, that these Starlinks that Ukrainians relied heavily on, that was provided by United States, not Elon Musk. He does have contracts with the United States government, and part of the support that came from the United States were these Starlinks. And they suddenly get disabled when Ukraine was preparing an operation in Crimea. And then from there, we saw several failures of the Starlink during operations. And then by 2023, we see the Russians start acquiring Starlink on the black market, and the Russian military using it. And it has cost a lot of lives, and it's extremely deadly for Ukrainians. And we were screaming like someone needs to do something, because this is absurd.
Now they have drones, Russian drones with Starlink on board.
Is that in violation of U.S. sanctions? The same U.S. sanctions that you cannot provide technology or military components to the Russian military.
Certainly Elon Musk can turn all that off. If he wants to, he can turn it off, but he doesn't. In fact, what he does is then get influenced by Putin about Taiwan and the use of Starlink over Taiwan. And these are big names he's dealing with. These are the biggest world leaders in the world. He's operating like an agent, really, because he's providing favors for them. but yet he's still got top security clearance and he's in charge of all these American companies that receive all these benefits from the American government.
Now Elon has basically shifted from the U.S. besides being in U.S. politics and president-elect and carrying out this, but his money has shifted now over to interfering in British politics and
Canadian politics, mind you.
And supporting Putin's candidate, Nigel Farage, who was one of the main people during Brexit. Everyone in UK by now has realized that Farage is working on behalf of the Kremlin. Last I checked, there were reports that Elon committed like $150 million to Farage. So it's a system that's not just for the U.S. They mainly have blamed for the Soviet Union collapse, America and Britain. This is their number 1 and 2 target. They want to see United States implode. They want to see Britain implode. They were already successful in separating Britain from the EU, which has been a disaster economically for Britain. So now Musk is doing everything to implode America. He's already assisted in getting Trump in. He's pretty much born himself a seat. And it's cute what Medvedev is saying about changing constitution. You weren't even counted a naturalized citizen because the reports are that Musk entered this country illegally. So technically he received his citizenship based on fraud. And technically he can lose his citizenship if we had a functioning system. And then now he wants to continue imploding U.S., attacking all the key national security agencies that keep America safe. And at the same time, he's moving over to UK and doing everything to destabilize and throw everything up in the air over there.
Let's be clear about what he's going to be doing now as this Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which is not part of any government, at least not the American government, is...
No, maybe a Russian government.
Yeah, but it's exactly to the point of trying to make here. He's going to take $2 trillion out of the actual budget of the government. And he's going to put it where? Where is that $2 trillion of demand for services? Where is it going to go? Is it going to go into the private sector where he can then monetize some of those services because they will need to be done elsewhere? And then you've got Twitter, or X, which is the biggest platform for disseminating news information. And if he is as close to Vladimir Putin as we say he is, all those functions that have previously existed in the executive branch are going to be under him, under the shadow president, and with a direct line to Vladimir Putin. The amount of control that Putin will be seizing from America and the puppet that they'll leave in the White House will be Donald Trump or J.D. Vance. But they'll have nothing to spend money on. Taking $2 trillion out of their budget is significant. What are they going to be doing? Basic foreign affairs, a little bit of the Pentagon, although the space wars are not going to be a part of their world. We're talking about a significant shift in power, but to the biggest foreign adversary. And yet we're a month away from the inauguration date, and people have not even presented a challenge yet to why this man is going to be the president and why Elon Musk is playing this role of a shadow presidency.
And on top of it, I don't know if you've seen the volunteers for this made up bullshit. It's not an agency, at least not an American agency. DOGE, who are the volunteers? Marjorie Taylor Greene and a bunch of other nut jobs who again have been disseminating Russian propaganda proudly.
One of the countries that really piqued my interest, and you brought it up last time we spoke,